Charles Kuralt had a gift for reminding America of its human heart. The longtime CBS News traveler died on a Friday in New York, but he left behind a legacy of road stories that felt like postcards from the soul. Viewers thought of him as the nation's most trusted storyteller. What they didn't see was a private truth that would have wrecked his public image had it emerged sooner. For 29 years, Charles Kuralt quietly sent a woman $600,000 while his wife kept house in New York. He bought Montana land, paid college tuition, and signed letters pop to children who were not his. On the screen, he was the gentleman rambling the back roads. Off camera, he lived two separate lives. The secret held until the day he died, when a letter surfaced and upended everything. Kuralt wasn't truly brought up in Wilmington, though he was born there. His mother, Ina, went to Wilmington specifically because it had a hospital. On September 10, 1934, she delivered him at James Walker Memorial Hospital. Then, Ina and her husband, Wallace, carried their newborn back to her parents' tobacco farm in Onslow County. The farm ran 100 acres. That's where young Charles spent his earliest years. No electricity, no indoor plumbing, no sink. Drinking water came from a porch pump, dipped out with a gourd hanging on a nail. Heat was wood stove heat. He didn't grouse about it. He pasted newspaper kites with flour, tied them with tobacco string, and flew them so high above the barn he joked God could read the headlines. He carved dogwood slingshots and teased Venus flytraps with straw. The Kuralts moved often: Washington, North Carolina, Steedman, Atlanta, then finally Charlotte in the mid-1940s, when Wallace Kuralt became head of the Department of Social Services for Mecklenburg County. Each town brought something new, and Charles fell hard for radio. At 14, he was announcing minor league baseball and hosting a music show on Waze Radio in Charlotte. That same year, he won a local writing contest for a sports piece about a dog interrupting a ball game. From 1945 to 1948, at Alexander Graham Junior High, a teacher named Ann Batten taught him journalism. He wrote a column called The Kaleidoscope for the school paper. Then came a startling turn. In 1948, still 14, he won the National Voice of Democracy contest. Only 4 winners were chosen that year. He received a $500 scholarship and was flown to Washington, D.C., where he met President Harry S. Truman at the White House. He also delivered his speech at Colonial Williamsburg, standing where Patrick Henry once declared, "If this be treason, make the most of it." Kuralt later said he tried to capture the same bold American spirit. The contest dated only to 1946, making him one of its earliest national winners. It was a sign of what was coming, long before high school ended. Summers took him back to Onslow County to help with tobacco. He gathered leaves at harvest, handed them to a stringer, and watched them tied to sticks for the barns. What he loved most were the 50-mile trips to market in Kinston. His grandmother, Rena, loaded the wagon with cured tobacco, hitched the mule, and told stories of bandits who robbed returning farmers. Wagons once traveled with riflemen at the lead, she said. Charles played sentry, scanning the road for make-believe outlaws. Those rides would color his storytelling for television decades later. He also saw what many white children did not. In the segregated South, he attended all-white schools, but he saw how black neighbors were treated. Charlotte police were often violent. The black press, including the Charlotte Messenger, documented beatings in the streets. Wallace's social work job exposed more inequity. Kuralt rarely preached politics on TV, but he consistently found people the rest of the news ignored. That was how he stood up. At Central High School between 1948 and 1951, he wasn't just another student. He was the school's standout writer. Classmates voted him most likely to succeed in 1951, though he was already succeeding. At 14, he'd been a radio announcer. That same year, he won Voice of Democracy, shook a U.S. president's hand, and earned $500, worth well over $5,000 today. As editor of the school paper, he drew the attention of working journalists. He entered the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1951. He majored in history and worked for several stations, WNC and WCHL, covering football and basketball, producing radio documentaries, and keeping up grades. He joined the St. Anthony Hall literary fraternity. Classmates marveled at how he could write a script, record it, then walk straight into a history exam without missing a beat. In 1953, at 19, he worked part-time for Waze Radio in Charlotte, real broadcasts, not a campus gig, calling baseball with the warm cadence that later became his signature. While others barked statistics, he told stories. Listeners called the station to praise him. Managers had to remind themselves he was still a teenager. His voice made people feel seen. By 1954, he was editor of the Daily Tar Heel, and he wasn't timid. He wrote blistering editorials against segregation and took the heat that followed. Some called him a communist. State politicians mocked him in public. When the university banned alcohol in fraternities, he ran a tart editorial, Pierre, meet Fred, skewering the rule by likening it to a French crusade against wine. He didn't just report the news. He provoked the powerful, and did it with wit. He graduated in 1955 with a history degree. His family urged law school, the safe path. But he had just won a national award for a radio documentary on North Carolina's past. Professionals around the country noticed. He stunned professors by turning down law for full-time journalism. It was a risk. The Kuralts weren't wealthy. 2 years later, in 1957, CBS hired him. At 23, he became the youngest correspondent in network history. In 1959, Charles Kuralt moved to CBS headquarters in New York, the same building where his hero, Edward R. Murrow, worked. After a week filling in as a writer for Murrow's broadcast, he was bumped onto the TV news team. CBS badly needed on-air reporters. Television news itself still felt experimental. Kuralt worked on shows like Dimensions on Health and produced short portraits of American life. He learned to craft tight, clear radio pieces at 3 a.m., urgency that shaped everything that followed. By 1960, at barely 25, he was the first host of a primetime series, Eyewitness to History. He helped cover the Kennedy-Nixon debates. 77 million people watched, more than 60% of U.S. adults, and TV news changed forever. Variety praised him as young, poised, and authoritative without theatrics. He seemed trustworthy, remarkable for a newcomer anchoring a historic political moment. In 1961, CBS gave him a bigger challenge: Chief Latin America correspondent in Rio de Janeiro. He was still in his 20s and responsible for 23 countries. It was dangerous work. Riots, coups, and fear were routine. One mistake could cost a life. He stayed until October 1962, as the Cuban Missile Crisis pushed the region toward the brink. Each dispatch proved he could report calmly from chaos. Back in the States in 1964, he found a country in upheaval: protests, war, civil rights. His Vietnam reporting was harrowing. On one mission, he and his crew followed Vietnamese rangers into an ambush. "Half the company we were with got killed," he remembered. "We were lucky as hell not to get killed." In 1965, he produced a Christmas special from Vietnam. A soldier died on camera. He covered the Selma marches with quiet interviews that let emotions speak for themselves. He was in his 30s, chronicling the decade's hardest truths. By 1967, he was worn out by the chase, sprinting to beat other reporters to the big story. He pitched CBS something odd: no assignments at all. "Give me 3 months just rolling down the Great American Highway to see what I can see." He'd read John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie and wanted to follow the ache of curiosity. Executives laughed at first, then one said yes, on the cheap. In fall 1967, Kuralt and cameraman Isidore "Izzy" Bleckman set out in a rented motorhome. It wasn't glamorous. Stained seats, a fridge stocked with beer and soda, and many meals of peanut butter and crackers. Mornings, they'd pick a town about 100 miles away and drive. That humble plan became a landmark. Over time, they wore out 6 motorhomes, logged more than 1 million miles, and made 500 segments across 48 states. With each stop, Kuralt recovered something the news had forgotten: kindness, plain truth, meaning in ordinary lives. The first On the Road aired October 27, 1967. George and June Butler making maple syrup in Jacksonville, Vermont. George said on camera, "You can get color and you can get sound, but you can't get smell. And the aroma is one thing. Maybe it's the osmosis of the sap getting in your system." They weren't in it for money. The joy was the woods. That piece set the show's tone: simple, honest, warm. Viewers fell hard. By 1968, they'd gone 50,000 Muncharm. A 99-year-old bricklayer in Iowa still on the job sent ratings soaring. Kuralt found a 104-year-old jogger, a house built of beer bottles, the woman with the world's largest ball of string. He ticked off a roll call of characters: wrestlers, jugglers, mountain climbers, traffic cops, tattoo artists, Gandhi dancers, sheep shearers, bagel bakers, horseshoe players, rodeo riders, sorghum makers, seashell collectors. Each story held a small celebration of life. In 1970, producer Shad Northshield transformed the series by adding mobile editing. Now, they could cut film on the road instead of hauling back to New York, saving time, money, and momentum. It kept the wheels turning and made Kuralt feel free. In 1972, he made one of his most powerful segments on old hobos riding California rails. Men outside the margins, living in camps, a way of life fading as highways took over. He treated them with dignity. The piece won an Emmy, and their stories survived because he listened. In the 1970s, On the Road became an institution. They filmed over 600 shorts. Time magazine called them 2-minute ceasefires during an era of riots, protests, and war. While most news fed division, Kuralt showed people in hope. He avoided interstates. "Highways let you drive from coast to coast without seeing anything," he said, and took the back roads. He wore out 6 motorhomes and found the country's pulse. In 1975, he won a second Peabody. Judges called him a bicentennial historian for capturing America's people and land. One 1974 piece stood out, a one-room school in Montana and a teacher, Ira Perkins. He had taught there 53 years, starting in 1933 during the Depression, earning $60 a month, about $420 for the year. He never left. He educated the grandchildren of his first class. Mornings began with dancing to wake the kids and teach courtesy. In that room, one grade solved math while another read history. Simple, and it worked. Kuralt's tone was hushed respect. In 1975, he joined a wagon train traveling from Valley Forge to California for the nation's 200th birthday. It became On the Road to 76. He promised to visit all 50 states. He lived with the riders, told the story saddle sore. Another Peabody praised how he proved the pioneer spirit still lived and how he gave voice to forgotten places. In 1976, he profiled a blind climber attempting Mount McKinley, now Denali, tallest peak in North America. The man couldn't see but climbed anyway. Kuralt showed what courage looks like and reminded viewers that heroes are neighbors, not movie myths. In 1977, On the Road turned 10. He celebrated barber shops, simple rooms where people talk about everything, sports, politics, heartache. He also revealed that his original pitch had been for 3 months. No assigned stories, no grand plan. He ended up doing it for 25 years. It wasn't easy. Broken motorhomes, cold bunks, unmarked roads. But he kept going. In 1979, he tried something new. On the first CBS Sunday morning broadcast, January 28, 1979, Kuralt stood in the wind at Cobscook Bay, Maine, talking about bald eagles. "Someday, if you are in the right place, and if you are lucky, you will look up and see an eagle on the wing. It's a sight to stop your heart." There were only a few left in the lower 48. Alaska had 30,000. His point wasn't just nature, it was care. That same year, he became Sunday Morning's host from New York. He still traveled midweek and flew back to anchor weekends, living that way 9 more years. He finally gave up the road in 1988. 21 years of motion had worn him down. Rumors said he filmed an episode in China in 1985. Not so. In 1989, he did cover the democracy protests. He'd always been willing to do hard news. In 1967, he joined Ralph Plaisted's North Pole expedition by snowmobile at temperatures near $40 below. In the 1960s, he reported on the Congo Revolution, but competition wearied him. The road restored him. In 1990, his memoir, A Life on the Road, became a bestseller. It wasn't all sweetness. He nearly froze filming the Northern Lights in Alaska, down to 60 degrees below, cameras icing over. He wrote about loneliness, weeks without real conversation, a bout of food poisoning in Louisiana that put him in the hospital for 5 days, a rattlesnake near miss in Arizona, and once pulling over just to scream at the sky. The road could be cruel. Even so, Sunday Morning thrived. Peabody's in 1979, 1982, and later. The show's signature Nature Minute ran 90 seconds. No script, only seasons changing. Each one took 3 to 5 days to film. He would redo a voiceover up to 12 times if a single word rang false. He selected every story himself and rejected dozens a week. By the early 1990s, over 6 million people woke early on Sundays to watch. He retired April 3, 1994 at 59. He never received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1996, though many expected it. He did enter the Television Hall of Fame and won the Walter Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism. He kept working. An American Moment aired 3 times a week. He hosted I Remember, revisiting major events. On June 1, 1962, Charles Kuralt stood in a New York City Hall courtroom and married Suzanne Petty Baird. The ceremony took 1 minute. To onlookers, it was simple. A rising journalist, a smart lawyer, a tidy life on the Upper East Side. Petey could not know she was stepping into a 35-year deception. 2 years earlier, Kuralt had divorced his college sweetheart, Sori Guthrie, married in 1954. Within 6 years, the marriage to Petty began to split in a way she couldn't see. In 1968, in Reno, Nevada, Kuralt met Patricia Shannon, a divorced mother of 3 known for community work. That summer followed the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. The country felt frayed. Kuralt had just launched on the road, which provided a perfect cover for constant travel. He brought 3 dozen roses to Patricia, took her to dinner, and they talked all night in a motel lounge. A 29-year relationship began. By 1969, Kuralt helped Patricia obtain a divorce, moved her and her children briefly to New York, then to Colorado, farther from scrutiny. That year, he started sending money. Over the next 10 years, he gave her about $600,000, worth over $4 million today. He helped her start a landscaping business, paid for study in London, and bought her homes in San Francisco. While his legal wife managed the social calendar in Manhattan, Kuralt was raising another family across the continent. In 1970, he bought 20 acres in Montana along the Big Hole River. With Patricia, he built a cabin. He told Petty it was only a fishing spot. Every September, he vanished for weeks, not alone. He purchased an old schoolhouse nearby and spent $180,000 converting it into a writing office where he planned to retire with Patricia. Eventually, he expanded the land to 90 acres. It wasn't a hideaway, it was a second life. By 1971, he was signing letters to Patricia's children as Pop. He bought a first baseball glove, taught a daughter to drive, paid college tuition, showed up at holidays, and treated them as his own. He phoned Patricia almost nightly and visited every 2 to 3 weeks, even at his career's busiest. He began bringing Patricia's son along to CBS assignments, even political conventions, introducing him proudly. Meanwhile, his wife in New York assumed he was just working hard. He also bought Patricia a $50,000 cottage in Ireland, another secret thread in the other life. In June 1997, Kuralt lay in a New York hospital, dying of lupus. 16 days before he passed, he sent Patricia a letter. "I'll have the lawyer visit the hospital to be sure you inherit the rest of the place in empty if it comes to that." 3 months earlier, he had quietly given her $80,000 to acquire 20 acres, disguising it as a standard sale. Now he was spelling out his wish. She should have the entire Montana property. He died on July 4th, 1997. At the funeral, Patricia Shannon arrived with that letter. The moment exploded the myth. Petty, his wife of 35 years, learned on the spot that her husband had supported another family, poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into it, purchased land, paid tuition, and spent holidays there while she sat at home in the dark. The letter became the heart of a court fight. The Montana land, by then worth over $600,000, was contested in a bitter case. After Petty died in October 1999, Kuralt's daughters from his first marriage joined the battle. Shannon testified that Kuralt had raised her children as his own. In court, she read a Christmas poem he gave her, promising pearls, a suit, a sweater, and him. It ended, "My life." That poem and the letter were proof. On March 22, 2000, the Montana Supreme Court ruled for Patricia Shannon. The estate paid $350,000 in taxes on land it no longer owned, pushing the loss near $1 million. Kuralt's daughters lost that property and the comforting public image of the father they thought they knew. Then came the final coda. In 2002, Patricia Shannon published Charles and Me. She told everything: the poems, nightly calls, trips, the way he took her son on CBS journeys, the Irish cottage, the decades of spending money. She wrote that Kuralt hadn't only misled his wife, he had misled the country. The storyteller America trusted to tell the truth had lived the largest lie of his life off camera.